Okay, hello. So you will have read Act 1, Scene 2 and Act 1, Scene 3 last time. And we're going to look at Act 1, Scene 2 today. So Act 1, Scene 1 set up kind of the war side and understanding that aspect of the play, and also the state of mind that Romeo's in at that point. And again, you will have looked at that in more detail prior. Now, we're going to look at the Capulets this time, and it's a more personal, it's a more one-to-one basis. It's not as kind of contextually combative as before. We're going to see them kind of on a more personal, humane, familial level. Okay, so we've got Paris here. Now, you'll know that from your context research, marriage was not about love. It was about power, status, wealth, all those kind of things. It was about elevating yourself or your family. And we're going to see why Capulet wants that to happen, but also we're going to look at what kind of a father he is. Is he a good father? That is kind of one of the big questions of the entire play, really. Could you call him a good father? Obviously, good can be contextually kind of ambiguous there. So he starts off, and he's talking to Paris. Now, Paris is the person that we're going to find out is the person that he's really picked out. He's taken his time. He's looked at it carefully, and he's picked out this is the best person to marry my daughter. So he says, "But now, my lord, what say you to my suit? So what do you say to my suiting to your daughter?" And Capulet says, "Saying over what I've said before, my child is yet a stranger in the world. She hath not seen the change of 14 years. Let 2 more summers wither in their pride, ere we may think her ripe to be a bride." Now, my child is yet a stranger in the world. So we're learning that she's 13 years old. And of course, contextually, that's very different now to how it was then. But, women would be married much younger than that, to be honest, to men, in their late teens, early 20s. Also, he says, "Ere we may think her ripe to be a bride." Shakespeare's using that metaphor. But we can also think about why the word ripe. Think what ripe means. Ripe means that something is ready to be eaten, but it's kind of a judgment thing. Some people prefer bananas when they've got kind of brown sections on them and they're softer. Some people prefer bananas when they're green. Some people prefer bananas when they're exactly in the middle of both of those. Yeah. So ripe is almost kind of subjective. It depends on who you are and what you think. So it's interesting that he says ripe to be a bride there. Now, Paris quite rightly says, "Younger than she are happy mothers made." That loads of people have got married before the age of 14. She's not seen 14 years, so she's 13, and we need to let 2 more summers with her. So she's going to be 15, maybe even 16 by the time she gets married. And Capulet kind of gives a bit of a burn here. "Too soon marred are those so early made." Now, marred is a bit of a wordplay on married, but also marred as in damaged. Now, this is usually referenced as a way of him kind of insulting Lady Capulet, his wife. That those who get married so early are often damaged and kind of not good enough and not right. But we also see some more kind of upsetting side to it, that he says, "Earth hath swallowed all my hopes but she." Think about what that personification means. That Earth has swallowed up all his hopes of having someone be married, except she, Juliet. So he's clearly lost children in the past, and obviously, again, in the context, he should have looked at the idea that, or he should have come across the idea that, people have a lot of children. If your child is going to die, that's something you kind of expected in that time, because so many kids don't even reach the age of 5, for example, because of disease and famine. And bear in mind that these are really, really rich families, and even they have lost people. So that's showing just how awful it is. He then says something that seems quite nice. "Woo her, gentle Paris, get her heart." Now that kind of goes against what we've seen in terms of context. Like actually, he wants Paris to almost date, to kind of flirt with Juliet and get her to like him. He says, "My will to her consent is but a part." Legally, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what Juliet thinks. It's all about what the father says. It's a patriarchal society. Okay, and we talked about this before, so you should be familiar with that. At this point in the play, there's an element that I have to play as a father. I have to choose a suitor for my daughter, but her consent is a part. He seems like quite a nice guy. You know, we're learning that he does have a heart. He cares. I think is one of the main things to think about, especially during this time when often kids weren't actually raised by their parents. They were raised by maids and people who were hired to do the job for them. We now learn that now at this point we see that he's organised a party. Look, this night I hold an accustomed feast. He's invited many guests, and he gives the serving man, the servant, basically a list of names, and he says, "Go around Verona, invite them to the party." Now, Capulet and Paris then go. This is where we get a bit of comedic relief. And that's enough comic relief for you. Now, the serving man is a bit of a Horton, really. He's a bit of an idiot, and often in tragedies, Shakespeare did like to include a bit of comedic relief because you don't want people just crying for 3 hours. But they were kind of plotted in just to, bring the mood up a bit, because you're going to see a comedy, there are going to be sad parts. You're going to see a rom-com, there are going to be jumpy parts. Actually, no, there won't be at all. I don't remember Jumping Up Love, actually. What a classic. Now, turns out this serving man can't actually read. He's not very good at that, which is a bit awkward. Now, he says he must go to the learned. So there's two implications there. One, that he just can't read, or two, that he can't read the handwriting. I always like to go with the idea that he just can't read because it's kind of funnier. And the fact he says, I need to go to the learned, the smart, the intelligent, to read this. So in come Benvolio and Romeo. Okay? Now, on that kind of narrative arc we looked at, wait, all the way. There we go. For like in the name of the Father, the Son. So Benvolio is talking to Romeo, and we know that Romeo is all kind of down and dark and depressed because of Rosaline. And we are seeing Benvolio try to make him feel better. And he says, "Tut, man, one fire burns out, another's burning." So, plenty more fish in the sea, basically. Now, one desperate grief cures with another's languish. Take thou some new infection to thy eye, and the rank poison of the old will die. AKA, you kind of just need to see someone a bit hotter than Rosaline. If you see someone that you go, whoa, yes, that's a 10 out of 10 there, that will make you forget. So Benvolio's trying to be a good friend, make him forget about his loss. So then we have Romeo and Benvolio kind of stumble across the serving man in the street, and he says, "Can you read anything you see?" So Romeo sees it as a chance, as a bit of a joke, and he says, if I know the letters in the language." So a bit of kind of comedic relief that we talked about earlier. And I'm sure none of you laughed at that joke because you are boring. There is something there that we could talk about in terms of if Romeo was ever kind of really, really into Rosaline. Yeah, there's a difference between love and lust. And is that going to be a theme, perhaps? Like an argument that we could make? Possibly. Because he seems to have changed his tone a little bit since Benvolio said, "You just need to find someone else, it's fine." So maybe it's not even that Rosaline was the one for him. He just fancied her, basically. So Romeo reads the letter, and this is what it says, and he reads it out loud. Signor Martino, his wife and daughters, and then we get a whole list of people who are invited to the party. And he says, a fair assembly. Whither should they come? So what's this for? What's going on? And the serving man, again, a bit of comic relief, just says, up. And Romeo's like, what? What do you mean? To where, though? What do you mean, up? As in, it's like someone saying, oh, come round. Where? Round. It's like, no, you idiot. We need the actual address. To our house. And he says, whose house? There's a bit of a back and forth. Again, it's funnier when you actually see it in person. My master's. And he said, I should have asked that before. And he then says, my master is the great rich Capulet. And if you not be of the house of Montagues, I pray come and crush a cup of wine. So everyone is invited except the Montagues. And he goes out. And obviously we know, dramatic irony, they are Montagues. And we also know he's possibly looking to find a new interest. So we can maybe guess that the cheeky lads are maybe going to get up to something they shouldn't do. Now, one of my favourite lines, and a great one to note down, is compare her face with some that I shall show, and I will make thee think thy swan a crow. You get the connotations of swan versus crow, and how they juxtapose. Yeah? So he says, compare her face with some that I shall show, and I will make thee think thy swan a crow. Benvolio is like, yes, finally, I found a way to make him feel better. And the admired beauties of Verona. Now, we'll see from Romeo that actually uses a lot of natural imagery when he's talking about romance and love. Now, that's a question we can talk about in terms of that nature is love is natural and it's meant to happen, and maybe that's why Romeo is so fixed on it at this point. Okay, so you need to be thinking about what kind of father is Lord Capulet, and also what kind of relationship do Romeo and Benvolio have. Okay, the rest should just be notes. So again, you need to be making notes as we go. I'm not going to tell you what to write. You need to be making notes about things that you think are interesting. Okay. What I don't want is you to just have done the little tasks that I've done. You also need to be annotating and making notes on things that you see in the scenes. Okay. Now, what kind of father is Lord Capulet from what we've seen so far, and also what kind of relationship do Benvolio and Romeo have? Those are going to be your tasks for today. And then tomorrow we shall be doing Act 1, Scene 3, which is a funny one, I think. I quite like that one. Okay? Bye!